The galaxy was old. It had seen the birth and death of countless stars. It had watched species rise from the mud of their home worlds, reach for the stars, and then fade away into nothing. But for 12,000 years, one thing had remained the same. The conclave of seven ruled everything. They were the oldest, the strongest, the most powerful species in the known universe. Seven ancient races that had long ago decided that the galaxy belonged to them. They made the rules. They decided who lived and who died, and no one had ever challenged them. The VTHK were the first among equals. They were tall insectoid creatures with hard shells the color of dry blood. They had mastered the art of biological weapons. Their plagues had ended entire civilizations. Their poisons had no cure. When the conclave needed something destroyed quietly, the VTHK handled it. The Drolith were beings of living crystal. They did not eat or sleep. They only calculated. Their minds worked faster than any computer. They predicted the rise and fall of empires with mathematical certainty. They were never wrong. The other five species were equally terrifying in their own ways. The Morvex could tear ships apart with their minds. The Yelfin lived for 1,000 years and forgot nothing. Kithray bred armies in vats by the millions. Together, the seven had never known defeat. They ruled from a massive station at the center of their territory. It was called the Throne of Stars. From there they watched the galaxy with cold, patient eyes. Young species emerged all the time. Most were smart enough to bow down and accept their place in the order of things. Those who refused were erased. It was simple. It was simple. It was clean. It always worked. When the long-range sensors detected something new in the year 2147, no one was worried. Another young species had figured out how to travel faster than light. It happened every few centuries. The conclave had a system for handling this. First they watched. They studied the new species. They learned their weaknesses. Then they sent an ambassador with an offer. Join the conclave system. Give up some of your population for genetic harvesting. Allow your numbers to be reduced to manageable levels. Accept your place at the bottom of the galactic order. In return, you would be allowed to exist. Most species accepted. They had no choice. The Dali ran their calculations on this new species called humanity. The results were interesting. Humans bred fast. They adapted faster. They had been fighting wars among themselves for their entire history. They were violent, unpredictable, and strangely creative. The Drouth recommended immediate extermination. The VTHK agreed, but the older members of the conclave were curious. They wanted to see what these humans would do. Perhaps they would be useful as soldiers or workers. Perhaps their genetic material would be valuable. There was no rush. Humanity had only a few colonies, a handful of ships. They were no threat. Ambassador Keith Voren of the VTHK was sent to deliver the ultimatum. He arrived at Earth with a small fleet of warships. Not enough to conquer the planet, just enough to remind the humans of their place. The humans invited him to a meeting at their United Nations headquarters. Keith Vaughn found this amusing. He had delivered this same message to a 100 species. Some had cried, some had begged, a few had tried to fight and died quickly. He wondered which type the humans would be. The chamber was filled with human leaders from around the world. They were small, soft creatures. They had no claws, no shells, no venom. Kev could not understand how they had survived on their own planet, let alone reach the stars. He delivered his message with the boredom of someone who had done this many times before. Earth would submit to integration. 70% of the human population would be harvested for genetic material. The remaining 30% would serve the conclave in whatever capacity was required. Resistance was not recommended. That the humans listened in silence. When Cathorn finished, he expected the usual response: fear, panic, perhaps some tears. Instead, a woman stood up. She was older, with gray hair and tired eyes. Her name was Maria Santis, and she was the Secretary General of the United Nations. She looked at Kth on the way a person might look at an insect on their kitchen floor. She spoke one word. Just one. No. Keith Vorn was confused. He asked her to repeat herself. No, she said again. We reject your offer. We reject your conclave. We reject your right to decide who lives and who dies. Earth will not submit. Not now, not ever. For a long moment Kether did not know what to say. In 12,000 years no species had ever refused. They always understood the math. The conclave was too powerful. Resistance meant death. He tried to explain this to the humans. He showed them images of worlds that had been cleansed. He played recordings of species that no longer existed because they had made the wrong choice. He told them exactly what would happen if they refused. The humans did not change their answer. Keith Warren returned to the throne of stars and reported his failure. The conclave was amused at first, then they were annoyed. These humans did not understand how the galaxy worked. They would have to be taught. The Vikai volunteered to handle the matter. They assembled a cleansing fleet, 200 warships that had never known defeat, enough firepower to crack a planet in half. It was far more than necessary for a species with only a few dozen ships and no real military experience, but the conclave believed in sending messages. When the cleansing fleet was done with Earth, every other species in the galaxy would remember what happened to those who said no. The fleet departed for Earth with great ceremony. Thousands of alien species watched the broadcast. They had seen this before. They knew how it would end. Another young race would be broken. Another world would burn. The order of the galaxy would continue unchanged. Not yet. No one doubted the outcome. The conclave had never lost. Humanity was just another name on a long list of species that have been foolish enough to resist. As the fleet entered faster than light travel, Kev allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. In a few days, the humans would learn the cost of their arrogance. The woman who had said no would watch her world die, and the galaxy would remain exactly as it had always been. He was wrong. He was so very wrong, but he would not live long enough to understand just how wrong he was. The cleansing fleet dropped out of faster than light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. 200 warships spread out in perfect formation. Each one was the size of a small city. Each one carried enough weapons to destroy a continent. Together they were the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Commander Drether of the VF Kai stood on the bridge of the flagship. He looked at the small blue planet on his screen and felt nothing but contempt. This would be quick. This would be easy. By the end of The day humanity would be broken, he ordered the fleet to advance. The human surprised him almost immediately. As the fleet approached Earth, small ships emerged from hiding places throughout the solar system, human warships. Dozens of them, then hundreds. Drether laughed. The human ships were tiny. Compared to his own, their weapons were primitive. They flew in messy formations that showed their lack of experience. This would not be a battle, it would be a slaughter. The first wave of human ships attacked. They came in fast and hard, firing everything they had. The conclave shields held easily. Human missiles exploded harmlessly against energy barriers that had stopped far more powerful weapons. But then something unexpected happened. A few human ships broke through the shield frequencies. They had somehow figured out the patterns in just a few seconds of combat. 3 conclave vessels took damage before the shields could adapt. Drether stopped laughing. The battle lasted for 6 hours. The humans fought like nothing the conclave had ever seen. They used tactics that made no sense. They sacrificed ships to take out single targets. They crashed their own vessels into conclave engines. They refused to retreat even when their situation was hopeless. When a human ship was damaged beyond repair, the crew would aim it at the nearest enemy and accelerate. They turned their own deaths into weapons. By the end, the humans had lost almost everything. Their fleet was gone. Their orbital stations were destroyed. Only a handful of ships escaped, fleeing toward the outer planets. But the conclave had paid a price. 37 warships destroyed, thousands of soldiers dead, more losses than they had suffered in the last 500 years combined. Drether was not amused anymore. He was angry. He ordered the bombardment to begin. The first target was Beijing. 20 million people lived there. When the plasma beams finished, nothing remained but glass and ash. The strike lasted 30 seconds. Sao Paulo was next, then Lagos, then Cairo, Delhi, New York, London. City after city disappeared under the fire from above. The conclave weapons were designed to leave nothing behind. No buildings, no bodies, no evidence that anyone had ever lived there. The humans tried to fight back, ground-based weapons fired at the ships above. Some actually managed to hit their targets. Another conclave ship fell from the sky, crashing into what had once been France. But it was not enough. It could never be enough. In the bunkers beneath the ground, the survivors listened to the reports and wept. 800 million dead in the first hour. The number kept climbing. 1 billion, then 2 billion. The surface of Earth was becoming a graveyard. General Marcus Webb commanded what remained of Earth's military. He was 63 years old. He had fought in 3 wars during his career. He had always believed that humanity would find a way to survive any challenge. Now he watched his world die and felt that belief crack. His communications officer was crying. Half the bunker staff was crying. The other half had simply stopped responding, their minds unable to process what was happening. Webb forced himself to stay calm. There was one thing left to do. He opened a channel to the hidden colonies, Mars, Europa, the secret stations in the asteroid belt that the conclave did not know about. Millions of humans lived in those places. They were watching the same broadcasts he was. They were seeing their home world burn. Webb recorded his final message. This is General Marcus Web of the United Earth Defense Force. If you are receiving this, Earth has fallen. The conclave has done what they promised. They have broken us. He paused, gathering his thoughts. But they have not destroyed us. You are still out. There are millions of you, and you have seen what they are willing to do. You have seen what we are worth to them. Nothing. We are nothing to them, just another species to be harvested and forgotten. His voice hardened. Do not let them forget us. Do not let this be the end. Hide, build, grow stronger, and when you are ready, make them pay for what they did here. Make them pay so dearly that the galaxy will never forget the cost of attacking humanity. He looked at the burning map of Earth one last time. Remember what they did here. Remember and become something they will fear. He ended the transmission just as the bunker shook. The bombardment was getting closer. It would reach them soon. Webb gathered his remaining staff, those who could still function, those who had not been broken by grief. He told them they had done everything they could. He told them he was proud to have served with them. He told them that their sacrifice would mean something one day. Then the ceiling came down and General Marcus Webb joined the billions of humans who had died that day. On the surface, the bombardment continued for another 3 hours. When it finally stopped, Earth was silent. The great cities were gone. The forests were ash. The oceans boiled at the edges where the plasma beams had hit. The conclave broadcast the destruction across 10,000 systems. They showed what happened to species that refused integration. They showed the burning world and the silent continents. They showed the cost of saying no. Across the galaxy, other species watched and trembled. They had seen this before. Another young race broken, another world added to the list of cautionary ties. No one mourned. For the humans, mourning was dangerous. It suggested sympathy. Sympathy could be mistaken for resistance. The broadcast ended with a simple message from the conclave. The human problem had been solved. The galaxy could return to normal. But in the dark spaces between planets, human ships were hiding. On Mars and Europa, human colonies were going dark, shutting down all signals that could be tracked. In the asteroid belt, human survivors were digging deeper, building faster, growing angrier. The conclave thought the silence meant death. They were wrong. The silence meant something else entirely. It meant that humanity was done talking. It was done negotiating. It was done being afraid. The silence meant that humanity was getting ready. 18 years passed in silence. The conclave forgot about humanity. They had more important things to worry about: trade, disputes between member species, minor rebellions in distant systems, the endless work of managing a galaxy spanning empire. The humans had been dealt with. Another extinct species, another closed file. But humanity was not extinct. Humanity was hiding. In the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, there was a rock called Siri. Before the war, it had been a small mining colony. Now it was something else. Deep inside its frozen core, millions of humans lived and worked in tunnels that stretched for thousands of miles. They called it Fury's cradle, and from here they planned their revenge. Admiral Yuki Tanaka was 41 years old. She had been 23 when Earth burned. She had watched the broadcasts from a refugee ship fleeing Mars. She had seen Osaka, her home city, disappear under plasma fire. she had watched her parents die from half a solar system away. For 18 years she had thought about nothing but revenge. She was not alone. Every human who survived carried the same weight, the same memories, the same cold, patient hatred. They did not talk about it much. They did not need to. It was in every room, every conversation, every decision. Earth was gone. The conclave had taken everything. And someday the conclave would pay. The first years were the hardest. Millions of refugees crowded into stations and colonies never designed to hold them. Food was scarce. Medicine was scarcer. Children died of diseases that had been cured centuries ago on Earth. Old people gave up their rations so the young could eat, but humanity did not break. They adapted. They always adapted. Engineers figured out how to grow food in the dark places between asteroids. The doctors created new medicines from whatever materials they could find. The scientists began studying the wreckage of conclave ships that had fallen during the battle for Earth, and that was when everything changed. The conclave technology was advanced, thousands of years ahead of anything humanity had built. Their weapons were more powerful. Their shields were stronger. Their ships were faster, but they had a weakness. They had stopped innovating. Why chain something that had worked for 12,000 years? Their technology was old, proven, reliable, and completely predictable. Human scientists took apart every piece of conclave equipment they could find. They studied how it worked. They found the patterns, the limits, the flaws, and then they started improving it. Conclave shields operated on fixed frequencies. Human engineers built weapons that could shift frequencies in milliseconds. Conclave sensors scanned for specific energy signatures. Human ships learned to disguise themselves as asteroids, comets, or empty space. Conclave computers were powerful but rigid. Human programmers created artificial intelligences that could think creatively, adapting to any situation. In hidden shipyards carved from the hearts of asteroids, humanity built a new fleet. These were not the desperate, cobbled together ships that had defended Earth. These were weapons of pure revenge, faster than anything the conclave had, stronger, deadlier, and clued by people who had nothing left to lose. Admiral Tanaka oversaw everything. She worked 20-hour days. She slept in her office. She learned the name of every ship, every captain, every significant weapon system. She studied the conclave with the patience of a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Her intelligence network spread across the galaxy. Human agents disguised as members of other species gathered information from 100 worlds. They learned the conclave's patrol routes, their supply lines, their political divisions, their weaknesses. The VTHK were arrogant. They believed their biological weapons made them unstoppable. They had forgotten how to fight without them. The Daleth were rigid. They trusted their calculations completely. They could not adapt when their predictions were wrong. The other members of the conclave had grown soft. 12,000 years of easy dominance had made them complacent. They had forgotten what it meant to face an enemy that was truly dangerous. Tanaka stored every piece of information. She built models of conclave worlds. She ran simulations of attacks. She planned and replanned until every detail was perfect. Her officers sometimes worried about her. She never smiled. She never relaxed. She never talked about anything except the war. Some whispered that she had lost her humanity along with her home world, that she had become something cold and mechanical, but Tanaka knew the truth. She had not lost her humanity. She had focused it, every human emotion she had. Love, grief, hope, rage had been compressed into a single point, revenge. When the time came, she would release it. All. The fleet grew, 100 ships, then 500, then 1,000 soldiers, trained in simulators that recreated conclave tactics. Scientists developed new weapons, spies brought back fresh intelligence. Everything moved toward a single moment. In the 18th year, Tanaka gathered her senior commanders for a final briefing. They stood in a great hall, carved from solid rock, looking at a holographic map of the galaxy. Every conclave world was marked, every fleet position was noted, every target was identified. We have 9,000 ships, Tanaka said. Her voice was calm, flat. We have weapons the conclave has never seen. We have soldiers who have spent their entire lives preparing for this moment. She touched a control. The map zoomed in on the VTHK home world. We begin here. The VTHK led the attack on Earth. They will be the first to fall, then the DLI, then the others, one by one until they. Conclave is nothing but a memory. An officer raised his hand. Admiral, what are our rules of engagement regarding civilians? Tanaka looked at him for a long moment. Everyone in the room remembered the broadcasts, the burning cities, the 8 billion dead. They did not spare our civilians, she said quietly. They did not show mercy. They did not negotiate. They simply erased us because we dared to say no. She turned back to the map. We will do the same. No mercy, no negotiation, no forgetting. When this is over, the galaxy will understand that humanity is not a species to be underestimated. We are not a species that forgives, and we are not a species that loses twice. She gave the order. Across a 100 hidden bases, ships powered up their engines. Soldiers loaded their weapons. Pilots entered their cockpits. The silence was finally over. Humanity was coming, and the galaxy would never be the same. The VTHK home world of CH Than was beautiful in its own way. Great hives rose from the purple soil like mountains, made of living tissue. Billions of insectoid creatures moved through tunnels and chambers that have been growing for 10,000 years. It was the heart of the VFK civilization, the source of their power. It was also completely undefense. No species had attacked the conclave home world in 12,000 years. The very idea was laughable. The VFK kept their warships at the borders of their territory, protecting trade routes and intimidating younger species. Their home was safe. It had always been safe. Admiral Tanaka's fleet arrived without warning. 9,000 human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. They surrounded the planet. Before a single alarm could sound, the VTHK leadership was confused at first. They did not recognize the ships. They tried to contact them, demanding identification. When they finally understood what they were seeing, they could not believe it. The humans were supposed to be extinct. The humans were supposed to be a footnote in history. The humans were supposed to be dead, but here they were, and they had not come to talk. Tanaka did not order a bombardment. She had thought about it. For years, she had imagined watching VTHK cities burn the same way Earth had burned, but in the end she decided. That was too quick, too merciful. VTHK had spent centuries perfecting biological weapons. They deserved to understand what that really meant. Human ships released canisters into the atmosphere. Millions of tiny pods drifted down through the purple clouds. The VFK watched them fall, not understanding what they were seeing. The Helix Plague began its work 12 hours. Later, human scientists had spent 15 years designing it. They had studied VFK biology in detail using samples captured during the battle for Earth. They had built a disease that targeted only VTHK DNA. It would not spread to other species. It would not affect plants or animals. It would only kill the VTHK, and it would do so slowly. The first symptoms were mild confusion, weakness, difficulty breathing. Then the plague began dissolving their internal organs. It spread through the hive networks like fire through dry wood. Every VK was connected. Every VTHK shared the same air, the same water, the same spaces. The plague moved from host to host without stopping. Within a week, the entire planet was infected. Tanaka's fleet stayed in orbit. They watched, they recorded everything, and when the VTHK leadership begged for help, begged for a cure, begged for mercy, Tanaka broadcast her response across the galaxy. You killed 8 billion humans in a single day. You showed no mercy. You offered no cure. You simply watched us die. She paused. Now you will understand how that feels. She left 3 ships behind to record the extinction of the VTHK. The rest of the fleet moved on. The Daleth home world was next. The crystal beings had already calculated the probability of a human attack. Their models had said it was impossible. Humans did not have the technology. Humans did not have the numbers. Humans did not have the will. Their models were wrong. Human ships arrived carrying weapons that should not have existed. Gravity bombs that created tiny black holes in the hearts of Dali's cities. The crystal spires that had stood for millennia collapsed in seconds, crushed by forces their builders had never imagined. But the true attack came through their networks. The Daleth had connected every computer on their world into a single system. They believed this made them stronger. They were wrong. Human artificial intelligences invaded the network like a virus. They moved through the drow systems faster than the crystal beings could respond. They did not destroy data randomly. That would have been wasteful. Instead, they targeted specific files, specific memories, 12,000 years of accumulated knowledge, science, history, art. Everything that made the Daleth who they were. They erased it all. Every file, every backup, every copy. When they were done, the surviving Daleth could not remember their own history, could not rebuild their technology, could not even communicate with each other properly. The most intelligent species in the galaxy had been reduced to confused children wandering through the ruins of their own civilization. Tanaka did not watch this time. She had work to do. The remaining conclave species tried to unite against the human threat. They gathered their fleets. They coordinated their defenses. They told each other that the humans had simply gotten lucky, that they could still win. If they fought together, they were wrong. About that too, human ships appeared everywhere at once. They attacked supply lines. They destroyed communication stations. They hit targets that the conclave thought were secret. The humans seemed to know everything, every patrol route, every hidden base, every weakness. One by one the remaining members of the conclave fell, the Morks, who had prided themselves on their psychic powers, found their minds invaded by human eyes that felt no pain and could not be controlled. The Yellen, who had lived for thousands of years, discovered that human poisons could kill even them. The Kether, who bred armies by the millions, watched helplessly as human bioweapons made their breeding vat sterile. The final battle happened above Keth Prime, the throne world of the Conclave. 7,000 alien warships gathered there, the last defenders of the old order. They told themselves they could still win. They told themselves that the humans would break against their combined strength. Admiral Tanaka brought 9,000 ships, and she had been waiting for this moment for 18 years. The battle lasted 19 hours. Human ships moved in patterns the Conclave had never seen. They coordinated perfectly, responding to changing situations faster than any alien fleet could match. They took losses, they took heavy losses, but they did not stop. They did not retreat. They did not hesitate. Doc, when the last Conclave ship exploded, the silence was absolute. Human soldiers landed on Keth Prime. 3 hours later, they walked through the ancient halls where the Conclave had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. The surviving Conclave elders were gathered in the central chamber. Old creatures who had once decided the fate of entire species. Now they were prisoners. Tanaka walked among them. She looked at each one in turn. She remembered Osaka. She remembered 8 billion dead. She remembered General Webb's last message. You tried to erase us, she said quietly. You thought we were weak. You thought we would die quietly and be forgotten. She gestured to her soldiers. They began removing artifacts from the walls, treasures that had been collected over 12,000 years. Monuments to Conclave power. We are going to destroy everything here, every statue, every record, every piece of your history. When we are done, no one will remember that you ever ruled anything. The oldest elder of Ethkai, who had somehow survived the plague, tried to speak. This is genocide. You are no better than us. Tanaka looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. You're right, we are no better than you. You taught us this. You taught us what the galaxy truly is. A place where the weak are destroyed and the strong survive. She turned away. We learned the lesson well. The war did not end with a treaty. There was no one left to negotiate with. The Conclave of 7 was gone, not defeated, not conquered, gone. Their home worlds were graveyards. Their fleets were debris fields. Their names were already becoming warnings. Parents whispered to their children, this is what happens when you anger the wrong enemy. Across the galaxy, 200 species watched what humanity had done. They had spent centuries living under Conclave rule. They had bowed down. They had accepted their place. They had survived by being quiet and obedient. Now they did not know what to feel. Some were grateful. The Conclave had been cruel masters. Their harvest ships had visited every inhabited world, taking what they wanted. Millions had died in their genetic experiments. Billions had lived in fear. Now that fear was gone, but it had been replaced by something else, something worse, thought the species that watched humanity's war understood what they were. Seeing this was not justice, this was not liberation, this was the pure cold Destruction of a species that had decided to become the most dangerous thing in the universe thought, and if humanity could do this to the Conclave, the most powerful force in the galaxy, what could they do to everyone else? The Galactic Assembly met for the first time in centuries. This was a gathering of all the minor species, the ones who had never been powerful enough to challenge the Conclave. They met in a great hall on a neutral world far from the ruins of Conclave territory. Representatives from 200 species gathered to decide what to do next. Thought they argued for days. Some wanted to form an alliance against humanity before it was too late. Some wanted to surrender immediately and beg for mercy. Some wanted to pretend nothing had happened and hope humanity would leave them alone. In the middle of the debate, a message arrived. Human ambassadors were coming. They wanted to address the assembly. The hall fell silent. No one knew what to expect. No one knew if they would survive the day. Ambassador David Okono arrived 3 days later. He was tall and dark-skinned, with gray at his temples and calm brown eyes. He wore a simple suit with no decorations. He did not bring guards or weapons. He walked into the great hall alone. Behind him a hologram flickered to life. It showed a blue planet covered in scars, continents that had been burned black, oceans that had boiled dry. At the edges, cities that were nothing but glass craters. Earth still wounded but healing. Okono stood at the podium and looked at the gathered species. He saw fear in every face. He expected that he had felt the same fear once a long time ago, before the cleansing fleet arrived. Before everything changed, he spoke quietly. His words carried through the silent hall. My grandfather was born in Lagos, Nigeria. It was a city of 20 million people, artists, scientists, teachers, children, families who had lived there for generations. He paused. Lagos was the 4th city to die. It took the Conclave 30 seconds to erase it, 30 seconds to end 20 million lives. My grandfather was one of them. The hologram behind him shifted. It showed images of the other destroyed cities. Beijing, Sao Paulo, Cairo, New York. 17 cities in 17 minutes. We did not want this war, Anko said. We asked only to exist. We sent no armies to Conclave space. We threatened no one. We simply said that we would not surrender our people to be harvested. We said no. His voice hardened slightly. The G-Clave answered with genocide. 8 billion humans died in a single day. Our world was left burning. We were supposed to be extinct. Another cautionary tale for a young species who might think about resisting. He looked around the hall, but we did not die. We survived. We rebuilt, and we remembered. The hologram shifted again. It showed the human fleet above Cath Prime, 9,000 ships arranged in perfect formation, the last Conclave warships burning in the void. The Conclave taught us what the galaxy truly is. They showed us that mercy is weakness. That peace is only possible when you are too strong to be attacked, that the only way to survive is to be more dangerous than anything that might threaten you. Okono's voice dropped. We learned the lesson. We learned it well. The assembly was completely silent. No one moved. No one breathed. Let this serve as the galaxy's first and only lesson about humanity. Okono placed his hands on the podium. We are not a species that forgets. We are not a species that forgives. And we are not a species that loses twice. He straightened. But we are also not the Conclave. We have no interest in harvesting your people. We have no desire to rule over you. We do not want to be your masters. He let that sink in for a moment. This assembly may continue its business. Govern yourselves as you see fit. Make your own laws. Build your own futures. You will find humanity to be reasonable neighbors. He paused. So long as you remain reasonable. In return, the human ambassador walked out of the hall without waiting for a response. His ship left orbit an hour later. No threats were made, no demands were issued, no tribute was requested. But the message was clear. In the years that followed, the galactic assembly became a different place. Disputes that would once have led to wars were now settled through negotiation. Species that had fought each other for centuries suddenly found reasons to cooperate. Trade flourished. Peace spread, not because anyone had become more noble, not because the galaxy had found some higher purpose, because everyone was afraid. Human ships patrolled the space lengths. Human observers attended every major meeting. Human intelligence networks reached into every corner of the galaxy. Humanity never threatened anyone directly. They did not need to. Everyone remembered what they had done to the conclave. Everyone understood what they were capable of. The Great Hall of the Galactic Assembly, built for endless debate and shouting matches, became the quietest place in the galaxy. Representatives spoke in whispers. Disagreements were handled privately. No one wanted to draw attention. No one wanted to be noticed by the species that had erased the most powerful civilization in history. 300 years passed, then 500, then 1,000. The stories about Earth's destruction became legends. The legends became myths, but the lesson never faded. Every species taught their children the same thing. Every child learned the same warning. Be careful what you do in this galaxy. Be careful who you threaten. Be careful who you harm, because somewhere out there in the dark between the stars, humanity is watching, and humanity remembers. On Earth, the scars healed slowly. New cities rose from the ashes. New forests grew in the burned places. Children played in parks built on ground that had once been glass. But in every city there was a monument. 17 monuments, one for each city that had died. Simple stone pillars with a single inscription: we remember. And in the Great Hall of the new United Earth Government, one phrase was carved above the entrance. The words that General Marcus Webb had spoken in his final moments. The words that had guided humanity through its darkest years. Remember and become something they will fear. The galaxy had indeed learned to fear, and in that fear they found peace. It was not the peace that the old dreamers had imagined. It was not built on trust or love or shared understanding. It was built on terror, on the memory of what humanity had done, on the knowledge of what humanity could do again. But it was peace, and sometimes that was enough. Thought in the silent spaces between stars, human ships continued their endless patrols, watching, waiting, remembering. The galaxy had no many terrors: supernovas that devoured worlds, black holes that swallowed light, the slow death of entropy that awaited everything. But nothing inspired silence quite like the memory of Earth's retaliation. Nothing at all.